today we're talking about this. This is a 7-string guitar, and not only are we talking about 7-string guitars, but we're talking about how to make them sound good with analog gear. So first of all, right, something that is very essential for getting a good low tune tone is to control the low end, right? Because as we're tuning the guitar down, or as we're adding another string which is lower than what we have on a 6-string, right, we are entering lower frequency register. We'll take a look at the differences between a 6-string kind of low chugging riff and a 7-string kind of low chugging riff. Let's play the exact same riff twice, but the first time I'm just using I'm just playing it in the key of E, which is the lowest key you can achieve on a standard tuned 6-string guitar. And then the second time I do it, I play it on the 7th string, including the 7th string, so I'm playing it in B then. I have this EQ on both of these channels, right? And the very important, very important thing about this is that I'm using the exact same impulse response, right? So this is a diesel cab, diesel with vintage 30s. It's voiced to be more modern. That's what it says. And we're going to the first channel again, and we'll see the same thing, right? It's the exact same impulse response. So no one can tell me that the pickup is different, the guitar is different, the amp is different, whatever. It's all the same settings, just played in different key with a different string. So let's take a look first at the standard tune version. See what the EQ does here. So here we go. Now let's go and do the same thing with the 7-string riff and see how that looks. So we can see that certainly, everything down here somewhere, around 200 hertz is where there's a lot of action going on with the 7-string, while there's way less with the 6-string, right? On the 7-string, right, we have some activity down here, somewhere between 100 and 200 hertz, right? There are quite some peaks going on here, whilst we don't have that happening with the 6-string re. Let's go back here. Also, these peaks, they are a little more intense, for example, so around 200 hertz, what's that, 180 or something, right? We have something going on with the 6-string, but the peak is just way higher with the 7-string. So this is the issue we are facing, and this is kind of the reason why sometimes it can be very, very unpleasing, to play with a tone that you're used to, and then taking it to, lower tuned guitars, 7-string guitars. The first thing I do is, take a look at the amp settings that you're having. As you can see here, right, we have bass on 5, we have mids around 3, and then we have treble between 4 and 5. So this is how it sounds. So it does sound quite modern. It does have the mid cut. Now, if I turn the mids in again, right? Let's see how that sounds. So also let's put them close to 5. You can hear that it just doesn't go with this style of Chuck playing. I don't really enjoy that. So this kind of means that we're in the good place. We're in a very good place turning down the mids in the first place, right? This is just something that feels very, very pleasant. I keep telling you that the boost is always on when I'm playing the M1, and this is, certainly it is on 90% of the times, because the boost, and that's a very great function on this device, it kind of replaces what many metal guitar players usually do, which is boosting with a tube screamer. Therefore, while it may seem paradox to sometimes cut a certain frequency out and then add it again later, or do it the other way around, keep a certain frequency just to cut it out later, this may seem paradox. However, this is just how it works. Having these different stages of tone shaping, right, just adds another layer, and it reacts differently all the time. So think about cooking a meal, right? There are certain meals that you can just do very quick, and they're great and good. But usually, if you're working with a professional chef, what they would do is they take their time, they season the meat, the vegetables, whatever, in the first place, slightly. They start cooking it. After an hour or so, they add seasoning. They start to stir it. cook it for another hour. Again, adding seasoning. When it's served, there may be something served on top. So it's kind of very similar to that. If it would make no difference, right, to add all of the seasoning in the beginning, right, they would do it very quick, very fast, and everyone would be good. But it's not working like that in most situations in life, right? So there are many components that shape a tone, starting from the guitar cap, amp, pedals, EQing, post-production, whatever. All these things need to be considered if you want to dial it into a good tone. Now, gain. And this is a thing that we're diving into right now. So when you've seen the video that I showed you in the beginning, you've seen that the gain settings were kind of moderate, so I never ever had it on 10, right? It was mostly somewhere between 6 or 7. Still have some headroom, so we could still add some gain, and it may feel nice, right? So when I'm just going here and chugging a little bit, it sounds good. If I now add some gain, let's go to 10. It may sound even better to some of you, but here's the thing. Now, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Are you just going for a pleasing tone that just, feels good when you're playing, when you're noodling, or do you want to create something? If I was now recording something, right, this is usually where you're not just going with one guitar track, but this is usually where we do at least double tracking. So we have gain on 7 here, gain on 7 no boost, we have gain on 7 with boost, and we have gain on 10 with boost. So let's compare those side by side. That's the second thing we need to keep in mind when we're diving into such a tone. What are we going to use it for? Are we just being in our bedroom jamming? Because this is usually when we want to have lots of gain just to feel comfortable, right? Just to have fun, gain and reverb and things like that may cover a little bit of our flaws, just make us comfortable playing and these things. When we're recording, this is a whole different story, right? So that can very much influence the way you should dial into a tone. Still, while these tones sound very good for amplifier, they're still kind of raw. You do some things in post. I'm not gonna do a full mixing tutorial right now, right? So that's a whole different topic. But I want to give you like a 5 or 10 minute impression of what would happen to a guitar tone. Usually what comes first will be something like a compressor, just to make sure that the signal is not too dynamic. Especially in metal, too much dynamics can kind of be counterproductive, really. So you want to have it tight, you want the dynamics to be at a certain level, and you can very easily achieve that. This sounds quite nice. So we're controlling the peaks and everything a little bit. That's the first thing you would do. Usually then, now what would come now is EQing. Fab filter is the EQ that everyone seems to love nowadays. So first thing with an equalizer like this is you would certainly do something like a low cut, which would look like this then, guitar. Somewhere here, right? We would do a high cut usually. Let's go for that. Like dark guitar tones, and see what we just did there. This wasn't lots of effort. So how it sound out of the amp, how it sounds with a couple of plugins, way different, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on. What I would do is just also again cut a little bit of the something like that, right? So again, this was the raw guitar tone. And this is the slightly processed guitar tone. Right, so this sound way different already. And I promise you, if this was a really professional production, there would be a lot of more stuff going on.